Okay, hey everyone, please come in. Pull someone from the outside. There's a lot of place here. Okay, so I'm going to ask again, who was here last time, like a year and a half ago? Yeah, so I gave a talk called Not the Agile I Used to Know, which was kind of a doomy, gloomy thing. I wasn't really sure where Agile is going, and there were a lot of things that bothering me, and it was a kind of a rant. So I decided that this time it's going to be different, and I'm going to talk about stuff that happened in the last 14 years since the Agile Manifesto, which I'm kind of excited about. There are things that interest me. You can find, I'm going to upload these slides immediately after this talk to my blog and tweet it, but this is a shorter version than the original talk I gave like in a user group 2 months ago, which took like 2.5 hours. People were actually like that at the end. Not excited, just falling asleep. So, this is the new and improved version of the new Agile. So, I'm going to start by talking about my favorite subject. That's me. I'm without glasses, again, here. I'm an Agile coach and a software coach. I work with teams on two kinds of processes. Team processes like Scrum and Kanban and modification, customization, all kinds of stuff. And the technical side, which I think are very important, like continuous integration and TDD, unit testing, and all kinds of testing. I'm writing a book, which is the long version of writing. It's going to probably take 2 years until it's completed, but a few chapters that are online are available at everydayunitesting.com. You can download it, it's free. You download it now, you download it forever. So I'd like some feedback if you want to give it. And one thing I want to mention, in 2 months, in May, I think, in Belgium Testing Days, I'm giving a whole day tutorial about the effective unit testing. You're invited. Let's start. Let's start. Everything starts with the Agile Manifesto. Actually, it started before that, right? People were actually practicing Agile without a name. But every time I talk about Agile stuff, Agile ideas, things that come from an Agile mindset, I go there. Because I always find things there that either relate to the situation I'm in or kind of principles that I want to either implement or fight against. Everything is in here. It's like a small Bible I carry around. The Agile Manifesto was written by people who came from all kinds of professions inside a development team. Developers, testers, project managers, software project managers. And one of the things that we've seen since is how things are moving out from the development team outside the development team. So the first thing I'm going to tackle is the business analysis thing. Who heard about A3? Okay, not many people. A3 is basically it's a page size. It's like this. Okay, it's funny, but yeah, this is it. There's an actual expert on A3 in this conference, Claudio Perrone. He's going to give a talk tomorrow, probably not on this, but if you have A3 questions, this is the guy to ask. A3 is just a size of paper, which we can put ideas on. So this is an example. This is an example of a business strategy template at the size of A3, which is an interesting concept if you think about it. A3 is a constraint. It's an artificial constraint because we can write everything on this page or we could put sticky notes on it as long as it fits in it. Because if it gets filled, we need to remove something out. It's called prioritization. Putting constraints on ourselves is something that we've been doing since before the Agile Manifesto. So if you think about iterations, Scrum iterations, for example, an iteration is a concept which is an artificial constraint. But once the constraint is there, we can start thinking about what's important. We start prioritizing what to put in and what we can delay. I actually did did the same thing with my backlog when I was a product owner. After a while, I decided that the product backlog got too big for me to manage, so I decided to put a constraint on it. And when something was pulled out by me from the backlog, it vanished. Actually vanished. I deleted it from everywhere else because people were just thinking, what will happen if we need it? We needed the information we just had. And I said, well, it will pop up again if it's that's important. And people had a hard time understanding it, but it gave me a better focus on the problem. So this is something that you would probably want to try. Finding artificial constraints, put them in and see what happens. Liz is also part of this conference. One of the things that is kind of new and experienced in the last few years is the fact that Agile gave us a lot of practices to do the right thing, to build the thing right. Practices that help us create working software. However, once Agile is leaving just the development team and started talking about products that actually are able to help the customer, give them value, we started thinking, okay, so how do we do that? So a product strategy is one thing. The way we did it until today, or until we started thinking this way, is that we'll have a product manager who'll think, we're going to need these features. Development team, go build these features. And they build these features, and the testers test these features, and we get a product, we pull it out in the market, and see if the product manager was wrong. All right. Usually he's wrong. These guys look at the process differently, starting in the end. Starting with the end in mind. So Chris Matz with feature injection, and Goiko Ajax with the impact mapping, and Liz Keogh with capability red. They ask what kind of impact we want to achieve, what kind of outcome we want to achieve. Once we specify that and everyone agrees about it, everyone, not just the product manager, collaborating, then we can think about options to how to implement it. Once we start implementing, we're kind of committed. We start to continue, and it's hard for us to change. But once we didn't start actually coding and present a couple of options for dealing with the impact, even testing if the impact is actually something that will actually happen, we have a lot of options. So starting with the end in mind, thing that actually happens more and more. So now that we have an idea of what to build, we start building it. Now, this is Craig from this morning, and this is Dean from the Safeland. Last time I was here, I kind of made fun of Safe. I still make fun of Safe. Now I can make fun of less too. But I said this is an optimistic view of Agile, not a sarcastic, pessimistic view. So I'll give you a few points why this matters and why this is important. The first thing is that scaling, whatever that is something that companies now want. They ask for it. That means they understood that at least at the low level, the team level, things that Agile proponents and practitioners did actually work. So this is a good thing, right? Okay. So that's one thing. Second, if you go to the last side, if you go to the safe side, well, that doesn't sound too good. Okay, if you go to the scaledagileFrameworks.com, you'll see you see out of focus at the development team level, and also on the left side, you'll see practices that Scrum forgot, like TDD, continuous integration, the technical excellence stuff that is the basis for actual, let's say, competence in the Agile world. So it's part of the framework, which is good, because Scrum kind of washed that away when it started talking to managers, because managers don't understand things like TDD. So it's bringing it back, and I think that's important. And the final thing, and Craig didn't talk about it today too much, and I haven't met too many people who practice less. I have met people who practice SAFe. And although, okay, let's start why it's important. Why do I make fun of SAFe? And I can make fun of less too. I believe that agile transformation, whatever that is, takes a lot of years. Dean started talking about SAFe, I think, in 2008. So we're 7 years in. I still don't think that's a lot of, let's say, practice/evidence that it actually works. But the good thing is when I talk to SAFe practitioners, they admit that they don't know everything yet, which is kind of nice to say. I think SAFe just came out with version 4.3, which means they're still learning, which is good. So there are things inside them that it's not completely wrecking the entire industry yet. On the other end of the spectrum, there's Lean Startup. Who heard about Lean Startup? Who's doing Lean Startup? Who thinks he's doing Lean Startup? Okay, build, measure, learn. This is the cycle. Let me tell you a secret. We've been doing this for like 100,000 years. Here's an example. Ooh, fire. Ouch, hot. I'll grab it here. Okay, we build something like a fire, or maybe it happened from thin air. We experience that. We learn not to touch it, unlike my son, and then move it from one place to another in a safe manner. So we've been doing that. But the interesting thing about Lean Startup is why it succeeded now. And the reason it succeeded now, it's because, and now I mean since 2000 and let's say 5, although the book was in 2007 or 8, we finally have both the technology and the expertise and practices to collect a lot of information, analyze it, and push it out for the next round. So the whole feedback cycle just got shorter. And this is why Lean Startup is actually working, like SAFe, in terms of marketing. We can actually understand how these things work. Design thinking, I call it Lean Startup's little brother or sister, is a product definition methodology. It's basically going out where the customers are, understanding how they work, what kind of problems they experience, and from seeing that and not translating through a product representative, seeing that, then developing the solution to the real problem. Lean Startup gives us the methodology and the practice to actually iterate through that. But it starts with actually going in, empathizing with the user, understanding their context, actually providing something for them. Right, so we have an idea, we know how to execute it. Let's see what happens when you actually start doing that. That's the new project. Who read this book, The Principles of Product Design Flow? Okay, go read it. It's very hard to read. But as an engineer, who has an engineering background here? Excellent, you love this book. Okay, and then don't tell everyone who hasn't had his head risen up that it's a good book because they laugh at you. When I read this book, I felt happy. And the reason I felt happy is because after years of fluffy agile and collaboration and kumbaya and let's do something together and self-organizing and then managers don't talk me about when it's going to be done. This actually looks at putting numbers back and metrics back in Agile. There's a lot of information there and ideas about queuing theory and theory of constraints and equations and numbers, and I felt so happy I had to read it twice. I'm going to read it again. What you see, by the way, on the right-hand side, a cumulative flow diagram, which kind of, I think, appears in many Agile project management tools right now. Again, it goes back to our ability to actually collect information automatically, analyze it, and do something about it. One of the things that the books talk about, and it doesn't appear just in that book, is cost of delay. We heard about cost of delay. Okay. So, when you start a project, what's the first question that comes up? When? What else? How much? When and how much? Which are actually talking about the cost. It's not really important what the project does, right? It's just important that it will not last more than 3 months, which is kind of stupid if you think about it. So cost of delay reverses this angle. It tries to put numbers and estimations on the value part, so we can actually prioritize better, not on cost, but on value. When you start doing that, we have better project, better innovation. We actually have a chance of actually making something a leap that won't happen if we continue to cut costs and save. The little star that you see near the book is called Maersk, which is a shipping company which actually changed their IT business to work with this method. You'll find a lot of case studies out there written by them. Actually, big company, $500 million in terms of budget for the IT company, and they shifted the entire way of prioritizing features and products to work like this. This is very interesting. Again, because we're kind of moving towards making decisions based on numbers and not just estimations of cost. Which leads me to no estimates, which I made fun. Who heard? Who does? Who thinks it's stupid? Yeah, I studied a year and a half ago and said it's kind of stupid. I don't think it's stupid anymore. When I started looking more deeply into no estimates, I started thinking about why do we need estimates for? And it led me to making better decisions. So we actually have alternatives for making decisions. I don't see it as no estimates, really, which some people do, but it's more estimates plus. What can we do in order to put a guess, to put our guess in the right light? So, for example, if I take Lisa's example of complexity calculation, complexity estimation, if I tell you that we're going to do a project that it's going to take 3 months, does it sound okay? It depends, of course. If I tell you that it will take 3 months and nobody's done it before, how does the 3 months sound now? Perfect, yeah, exactly. So compare these numbers with other stuff. There are many things that are outside cost estimations can actually help us, like cost of delay, for example. Compare value and cost. So these are the guys who actually lead the revolution. Woody Zilberfeld, Killick, and Vasquez. Follow the hashtag. Very interesting stuff there. And this is kind of the fact that it says no estimates means that there's a pack of angry project managers who are going after them in every point. So it's kind of funny to be from the outside looking in. It's kind of not so funny to be inside. Okay, so we now know how to actually manage a project like this. Let's start with the development. So let's start with stuff everybody knows, right? Everybody knows continuous delivery. Everybody's doing continuous delivery. Funny. How did that happen? Yeah, it's hard also. The principle of continuous delivery, again, it looks like an evolution of continuous integration, but it's not really. It's not a set of tools. It's a whole methodology. What do you do when you pushed out something that is kind of crippling the business? Okay, you need to revert that, roll back, or fix that quickly. So it's a whole set of tools and practices and principles that you actually have to think about. What I want to warn you about in CD is that I'm going to give you a story from my past. It was before I did any agile and any stuff after, just project managing a software group. We were part of a whole project that included hardware manufacturing and engineering and chemistry and biology. And we did the software part. We were very bad at it. I'm talking about the beginning of the 2000s. I think we were able to squeeze a release every 6 or 8 months, which we came like this to the release. And then we started to improve. And we actually got to a point where we actually could create an installer in less than a month, I think. This was considered a big success for us. Now, the thing is that we were thinking about ourselves, because now we were able to release every month. But who got this installer? The verification team who actually tested the whole system together. And they had a cycle of testing of 3 months. So we were able to deliver more quickly than they could actually pull, which at times actually confused them and make them very angry. So when you actually have the ability, with great power comes great responsibility, as we all know. Think about how you fit into that process. Going after delivery like Amazon for every 8 seconds may not be suitable for your process. DevOps. DevOps, anyone? Another cool buzzword that we're doing. DevOps basically is like roles or something, capabilities that we push from the developers outside the team so operation can work better. And this is, again, a sign of how Agile is moving away from just the development team and into the entire organization. Makes sense. So that they need to go work together, developers need to go. Up until now, they were needed to get along with product people and testers, and now operations people, maybe more people later. And what's interesting about it, and what I see as a good thing about it, is that developers are coming out from the basement where everyone, Goiko is saying, we let those developers play with Agile, and we will continue doing our stuff, so kind of similar to what Craig said. So they're coming out of the basement and start working with everyone else. And this is good because they take the part and responsibilities in part of the business. I'll give you another example. Who heard about microservices? Developers? Who's doing microservices? So why is microservices important? Because microservices were there before. It's a set of design principles, really. It was SOA before that and services before that. There's a lot of history of actually creating this stuff, lots of frameworks in the middle. But there's one concept that's important here, and this is why we actually need those. And we need microservices because now, if we actually build the architecture like this, we can pull out and replace one part of the system without shutting the entire thing off. And we like that because the other part, the big part, is making us money. And this is another proof for me that developers take the rightful place and responsibility inside a business organization. It's not just architecture. It's an architecture that actually solves a business problem. Okay, I like TDD, so I'm going to talk about TDD also. This is James Granning's book. He's doing a marvelous job about TDD at the embedded hardware space. So it's no longer, TDD is no longer for just regular software. And I'm speaking like everyone's doing TDD. No, there's a very small portion of people actually doing TDD. But for those who do, it's actually invading other parts of software. Because if you think about it, the PC is dead, right? Everything is an instrument, Internet of Things. This is where software is actually moving. But apart from that, there's another thing that blows my mind, and this is Neil Johnson. He's doing TDD verification for electronic circuits, for electronic boards. So he builds a system that specifies how the board should actually work. And then iteratively, he builds this board to work against the specification. This is amazing for me, because this idea of, if you translate it to manufacturing, it's kind of a mold. So you put a mold and fill everything in it. It's a bit more complicated than this. But 14 years, and this is what we've got. It's amazing. Testing. Who likes testing? Everybody likes testing, even those who didn't raise their arms. Okay. I think this is the biggest thing that the agile development folks have actually did in the last 14 years. Who knows these three amigos? The concept of three amigos? The concept of three amigos is we have three roles in a development team. The product who has the vision, this is what we need to build. The developer that builds it. And the tester says, look what the developer built. It's not exactly what the product wanted. It took a lot of time, and it still takes time in many companies, until every one of these roles is on equal ground. We're still working at it. There's a lot of thing of understanding how we've come as testers from actually finding bugs and understanding today what the tester actually needs to do and what he needs to know. So imagine load testing, infrastructure testing, security testing, companies that understand the value of a tester pay them very considerably like a developer, not as before. We're still on a process there, but it's going to take a while. I specified 2 books here, Agile Testing and More Agile Testing, by Lisa and Janet. ATDD and BDD, moving away from the cycles of TDD, which was in the realm of developers, outside into the product, specifying actual behavior in the system, things that we saw working in small scale. And we got short feedback there, and we adapted. Now moves forward into another realm, again, adapting that. I think the biggest impact about testing is something that we knew existed, but we otherwise did the opposite, is not understanding the context of things. So I tested software as it is. Someone gave me a procedure that they planned, and I worked step by step. And I didn't think about, well, who's going to use it and why. I'll give you an example from the same project that that blew my mind. So this project was a device that would ultimately go into a medical lab, a hospital lab, and it would process all kinds of samples. And we built the software for that. We didn't think about anything else. And then one day, like I think 3 years into the project, I actually got to go into a lab like that, only 3 years later. So yeah, let's take this guy. He would probably tell good stories to the developers back home. And I saw how crowded a lab was. Now, one of the features that we had to implement, I'm using had to implement because it was not interesting, it was not technologically interesting, or I don't remember. We had a lot of excuses not to do this, is integrate with an automation system inside the lab, which kind of became the biggest request later when I actually saw how important it is for actually put samples on this device where you can't actually get to it. Context is king, we know that. And the testers putting on the hats of the customer, understanding their context, where they work, where the problems are, what do you actually need to test, and what's important, what are the real risks, is, again, we come a long way. James Buck and Michael Bolton are two representatives of this camp. There are many. This really blew my mind, actually. So if you ask James Buck and Michael Bolton, they will tell you that there are no two kinds of tests. There are tests and there are checks. The ones that we automate are checks. Everything else, testing, is really done by a human being and therefore cannot be automated, which I really agree. So the tests that we actually write, both in, regardless of which level, the component level, system level, everything that we automate really confirms our belief on the system. Otherwise, we wouldn't write it. Makes sense. So basically, the tests that we write, and we can't write many of them because we have limited time, are not there to find bugs. They are run automatically to find regressions, and again, confirm that the system is still working as we expected it. So what helps us find bugs? Well, we know testers, right? So testers also have kind of a limited time. So that's a problem. Property-based testing really does something that amazes me because I used to work at a company that actually tried to do this thing. It's creating a model and creating all kinds of scenarios that test the system and finds bugs for you and reproduces the bugs without you having to write these tests. You just have to write the model, something like this, usually in code, not in a picture out of focus. But other than that, it can run hundreds and thousands of scenarios that you haven't thought about within seconds and minutes. And you can pull them into CR, in the continuous integration, they run all the time. And this technology is kind of amazing. I put it in the testing, most people actually use it as developers, but hey. Right. So we talked about all kinds of things in product development, but the entire organization is actually changing. So a year and a half ago, Bjart Borgman talked about here about beyond budgeting, which is, I would say, a new thing, but they've been doing it since the 1990s. They're using budgets and they're budgeting money for different parts of the organizations in a way that we work in Agile. We don't create a whole budget for a year and then create all kinds of dysfunctions where I need to blow all the money in order to get more next year. No, they budget it for a very short period, like a month or 2 months, and they run experiments, and they see what's happening, and when what succeeds, they continue to put the next budget on, and if something failed, they don't put more money on it, which makes sense because this is how we actually run our own money. It's kind of weird that organizations don't. So finance is changing, manufacturing is changing. Who heard about extreme manufacturing? Yeah, so extreme manufacturing, look it up, you'll find they build cars in an iterative manner, which is mind-boggling. You'll see all kinds. If you look it up and you see YouTube videos of it, you'll see how they start from a very simple requirement, very economic constraint on how much fuel it actually needs, and start from there. So that means they're using cheap materials, they're using cheap, very light materials. Apart from safety, this is their only requirement, and they build around that. And they do it iteratively. And now they're moving on to agricultural stuff. They're able to create models and change models iteratively, very cheap ones, and they start to print out sometimes in 3D printing, sometimes in actual manufacturing, very cheap constructs that a lot of third world countries actually need, and they open source the models, which is very interesting. Again, the concept: short feedback cycles, focus on actually what the actual problem is, and iterating through that. Who likes HR? Everybody loves HR. HR loves you back. Yeah, HR is changing too. Imagine now, if you're working in an agile organization that actually works, which makes you a lucky person, how do you get more people in? How do you retain that people that actually are there? How do you manage specialization versus generalizations? If you're so open-minded, what happens when someone wants to move across, above, somewhere else in the organization? How an organization is built is something that we need to think about and manage, and HR plays a big role in that. Customer support is changing because I managed customer support with Kanban just when I started thinking about Kanban because it made sense. But now it can grow to bigger lengths than the two people that I actually manage. Marketing starts thinking about what we do differently. Because if you have continuous delivery and everyone can push a button and put a feature out, and marketing didn't know about it, well, you know what? This feature doesn't really matter. So we need to collaborate with other parts of the organization as well. Marketing, sales, training. What happens when you need to actually train people? How do you do that when we mean to push a button, put 3 features out? How do we maintain it? And our friends, the lawyers, the ones that protect the organization, what do they do now? What happens if someone pushes the button and the bug that was in their code published all kinds of things that should have been private, but now it's public domain? The whole organization needs to work together, and it's changing too. So what is the new Agile about? It's about collaboration. Like I said, everyone needs to learn to work together, understand the responsibility of workflows together, how responsibilities affect their role. It's a whole system view. We're no longer part of a team, and we don't think about only this team. We need to understand how the whole organization works and how work flows through it, how it makes money, and how it avoids risks, and how it creates innovation. It's about making feedback cycles quicker, and quicker, and quicker. Because through these cycles we learn, and we experiment, and we adapt. But above all these things, what I think is that after 14 years, the new Agile is really exciting. Because imagine what we did in 14 years, and what will be in 14 years more. We're just the beginning. Thank you very much.